Hello, everybody. My name is Spencer Hawkswell. I'm the CEO of Counsel, a patient rights advocate and a lobbyist. Our organization is trying to achieve medical psilocybin regulations in Canada, as well as professional education and training for healthcare practitioners. We're also looking to develop research with psilocybin. Today, I am joined here by our lawyer and legal counsel, Paul Lewin, who is supporting 8 patient plaintiffs in a constitutional challenge which seeks to overturn the current prohibition of psilocybin and lead us towards medical regulations. Paul, I'd love to put it over to you to maybe talk a bit about yourself and introduce what you're doing with these patients in Counsel.
Thank you. So I've been a lawyer for 28 years. I practice in Toronto. I've had a focus on drugs from my early days as just a straight up criminal lawyer with a focus on all drugs. And over time, I became a cannabis lawyer, and I worked with Normal for many years, working on the regulation of cannabis. And I brought many constitutional challenges in my time in the cannabis context. And for the last few years, I've been working on psychedelics. And we've got an amazing team. It's myself and 5 other lawyers who all bring different skills to this. So we got a great case.
Thank you so much. So, Paul, I would love for you to maybe just set the stage here. In Canada, we have medical assistance in dying. We have legal cannabis. We've got safe injection sites in Vancouver and in other provinces in Canada. Why are patients having to go to court for access to psilocybin? And do you think, for what reasons are they likely going to win a court case if they bring one?
So, well, they have to go to court because the system's broken. There's Section 56 exemptions and SAP authorizations, which the government can grant. They're completely in the discretion of the government, whether they grant them. The government can refuse them for reasons unrelated to the patient's health. It's a crummy, broken system in which what it should be is like every other drug known to man, whether it's got a DIN or not. If patients can access it in Canada, then it's up to the doctor to decide whether the patient can get it. And there's many reasons that should work. The doctor is mandated by law to do what's in the best interest of the patient, which contrasts with what the government, their obligations. They have no obligation to the patient. The doctor is closest to the patient, so they know what the patient's gone through. In many cases, the patient's going through terrible suffering, and they've tried everything known to man, and the patient, and nobody knows this better than the patient's doctor about what kind of suffering they've gone through. And the doctor is trained and mandated to carry out patient-centered care. Patient-centered care is where the values and the needs of the patient are put front and center. It's to bring the patient in. It's a negotiation of care in which what matters to the patient matters to the caregiver, matters to the doctor. And the doctors are trained in this, and they're mandated to provide it. The government doesn't have to do any of these things. And that's why, and it's for all of these reasons and more, why this bureaucrat as gatekeeper is failing. And the only constitutionally compliant system is one in which there's doctor as gatekeeper. And I'm passionate about that issue, but there's other issues here that are big too. Healthcare professionals have to have proper training with psilocybin. This is for efficacy and safety reasons. This isn't just to pad their resume. It's important that they be properly trained when they're treating patients. And there's no clear road for them to get access. So that's a deficiency that has to be fixed. And then manufacturers of synthetic psilocybin and producers of natural psilocybin mushrooms must be permitted to manufacture and grow on a larger scale and meet this great need. Without all of this, what's happening is patients are being forced to go to the black market, which isn't safe or good, or patients are just suffering in silence. And these are serious conditions which can lead to suicide, which have catastrophic consequences for these patients who are already in terrible health. So we have the side, we have rightness on our side. We have justice on our side. This is wrong what's happening. We should be treating our most vulnerable in a much more compassionate, reasonable, respectful, and therapeutic manner. How we can leave them to one side is just outrageous. So these 7 brave plaintiff patients, as well as a healthcare professional, have stepped forward and said, enough is enough. We're going to force the government to change, to make these changes. So we're going to go to court, and a judge is going to force the government to put in a doctor's gatekeeper system, to force the government to allow a proper way for healthcare professionals to be trained and for producers to be able to produce and meet this need. So I feel very strong about this. It's a great, it's a powerful case in which we have rightness on our side, but to win, we have to marshal a lot of resources.
So I love listening to you talk, Paul, because you speak so eloquently about these things that are so important in Canada, right? Like patient-centered care, our charter rights, the ability for healthcare practitioners to be making decisions more at a local level than rather a centralized level. But is there any merit to them? Like what other cases have there been that might support the patients and healthcare practitioners looking for a resolution like medical psilocybin regulations?
Well, we have a lot of case law to draw upon because in the cannabis context, these issues were thoroughly fought out. So there's many cannabis cases spanning from Parker, Ontario Court of Appeal, and Hidsig, Ontario Court of Appeal, Factopoulos, Allard, Smith, and other cases in which the courts have very clearly discussed how these issues should be addressed. And I could talk all day about this, but I can express it in a very clear, concise way, and that's what the government has to do is they have to permit reasonable access. So that's what the patients are entitled to. And so if we can show that the substance is a safe one and that there's efficacy, but ultimately we're not trying to, it's not the same standard as getting a drug identification number. The real question is this a reasonable decision for the patients? That's the test. And it clearly is a reasonable decision when you're in such dire straits. And I like to give the example of someone who's considering walking over a bridge. And maybe if you're just out for an afternoon stroll and you see a bridge, you might make an inquiry about the safety of the bridge or how it was constructed. But if you're being chased by a bear, you're running over that bridge and you're not making these inquiries. And these patients, they're being chased by a bear and they need access immediately and they can't sit around waiting. So anyway, and the court recognizes that with that test, that it's all about reasonable access. So, and we can absolutely meet that test.
That's incredible. And I know that for so many patients, that bear that you're talking about, it is, a palliative condition. It is a cancer diagnosis. Now, it's been unfortunate that many of the patients that we've tried to help get access to psilocybin have actually passed away before they were able to get access, especially in the earlier days. How about today? I mean, the patient plaintiffs that we have, are any of them at risk of dying before resolution? And how might we get to a faster resolution on the case?
Well, our lead plaintiff, Thomas Hartle, could die any day. There's a number of our plaintiffs who are facing cancer diagnoses. So our plaintiffs are in very, very serious conditions. And the fact that they're being treated as such a low priority is outrageous. And what we can do in terms of changing this is, of course, this case is all about changing this, about forcing the government to do the right thing. We've tried asking nicely. There are many studies have been sent to the government, many arguments have been forward. There's been lots of Zoom meetings with very reasonable people who nod thoughtfully, but that's getting us nowhere. And we have a terrific tool in Canada, Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's how we got medical cannabis in the first place. The government didn't agree to it. We got it through well-argued court cases, and that's how we're going to do it here. But to do it, we absolutely need to have the resources to do it. And that means affidavit evidence and expert evidence. And it's such a critical time in the case right now. We're planning. So right now, we're just about to embark on the process of putting together our affidavit evidence. So this is our evidentiary foundation. the facts that we're going to use, how we prove our case. And we've got an ambitious goal of 24 witnesses, 13 of whom are experts. This would be huge, and we're potentially going to expand this a bit more, but we can only do this with help, with financial help. That we're doing this right now on a shoestring budget, and we're trying to spread every dollar as far as we can stretch it. But we need money, and we need it right now. It is absolutely critical for the evidentiary foundation. We can make whatever brilliant arguments we want to make at the hearing, but we can't do it if we don't have the evidence to establish this. So, having 24 affidavits, this is a massive task. So we're starting now, and we've got about 3 or 4 months to do this gigantic task.
Well, absolutely. And as your fundraiser and CEO of the organization, I've been going to as many organizations as I can, trying to explain to them the importance of this critical stage. I mean, you can even look at the Alberta regulations that have recently been put together. They're regulations, but the question is, what are they regulating? Psilocybin, but they don't regulate it until it's legal. And it's still not legal until a drug comes out with a drug identification number, and or until regulations are made at the federal level and it's federally legalized. So there's great reason, I think, for every organization in the country and every individual who would like to see psilocybin legalized and made medically available to understand the importance of why right now we need to get this evidence in. And I think you've done a great job of explaining that. But maybe you said something to me the other day that was very interesting about the importance of not only getting the evidentiary record or all of these expert witnesses and testimonies together for the patients, but also to express the different use cases that psilocybin might fall under, such as people being able to take it home for microdosing, being able to take it home for macrodosing, people being able to grow their own. This is the part of the case where we add all that evidence, is it not?
It is. So issues like you mentioned, grow your own, that for some patients, there may be financial limitations in which they're not able to pay for the cost of psilocybin bought from other growers, or may for personal reasons want to have control of their own medication and how it's produced. So, that's important. We want to, in this case, we understand that many people want different things. Some want to grow it themselves. Some would like to designate a trusted friend or caregiver to grow for them. And we want to accommodate those people. Others have trust in large licensed dealers who can produce it in a very professional manner in accordance with good manufacturing practices. So however you want to get it, you should be able to get it in that means. And that's part of this case as well, is we want to empower the patient. This case is all about the patient first. And by putting forward an evidentiary record, because how this works is at the end, the judge will strike down the laws, and what laws come in, replace those old laws, will be based on the evidentiary record that we have. So if we show that, for example, patients need to access it themselves, or they might need to take it home, or they might need to have it on an ongoing basis, not a one-off, then all these different scenarios can be accommodated. That this isn't a straitjacket, and that you can only get it one way, one time, and you're never getting it again. It's a wonderful substance which is shown to be safe and effective for conditions that are such a serious problem in Canada. It shouldn't be a straitjacket. It shouldn't be as difficult as it is.
That's amazing. And what do you think the likelihood of us getting to a place like that is due to this court case? I mean, what's the likelihood of the case winning? And then maybe in the next couple of years, what's the likelihood of Canada having medical regulations a bit like cannabis? And I know you can never say 100% or anything as a lawyer, but really, what do you think the likelihood is?
Oh, I think there's a very good chance that we'll be successful and that we'll set a great template for what's going to happen in the future. This case will define what the medical psilocybin is going to be like in Canada for years to come. This will define the law, and we can either have good laws or not good laws. The only caveat I would add is that we need the tools to do it. So the lawyers can dream up whatever wonderful arguments they want, but without that evidentiary record, without those experts, without the lawyers making this a high priority, not not something that everyone does in their spare time, but making it a high priority to do this right. Without that, then I feel less confident, but I do and I don't. We need that. The short answer is we absolutely need that. We have rightness on our side. So there's no reason we should lose. But we just ask for the tools to win this case.
So we just need money.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Well, I think that's important for everyone to hear because, again, that is one of the great difficulties that we have right now is just communicating that, A, this is happening, that, legal psilocybin or medically regulated psilocybin could be a thing in as little as how long? How soon do you think a resolution could be made if the court case is funded?
Well, so if we win the case, I'd say we could be going to having the hearing in perhaps 10 to 12 months, and maybe 12 months. We could be having the hearing. At the end of the hearing, the judge will provide his or her decision, and at that point, depending, so there's two parts to it. One is they're going to declare various laws invalid, and the government will be given a period of time to draft constitutional laws. And in the meantime, there's going to be some people, the plaintiffs for sure, and hopefully many others will be exempted from the laws. So, and we've asked for, in this document, we've really tried to think about everybody out there. We want the manufacturers of synthetic psilocybin to be exempted as well. And we want them to have the option of growing natural psilocybin mushrooms as well and providing it to the patients. And we want other patients who maybe aren't plaintiffs here, but they're out there and they're suffering as well, and they believe medical psilocybin can help them and their doctors support them. We want those people to be exempted as well. We've really thought about everybody. This is not about these plaintiffs trying to get a money grab. This is about 8 brave Canadians trying to make the law better for everybody. So to answer your question, how soon could it be? Well, let's say 1 year today, we're getting that decision. The judge could exempt many people from the application of the laws while the government has time to draft new laws. So
well, that's wonderful. And all we need is money to do that. Now, I know money is necessary at certain steps. I know you and I were talking, we're trying to get immediately $100,000. So in the next couple of weeks, in order to fund the case. How much money do you think the entire case will take?
I'd say perhaps it could be 700 or 800,000. It could be as much as $1 million. Okay. Because we have ambitious plans, and we know how this is going to change everything for a long time. So,
well, wonderful. We have goals that are achievable right in front of us. 100K. We've fundraised that many times before, certainly in easier markets. But I think that's the purpose of this interview certainly is to make it clear that we do have an achievable goal, right? Medical psilocybin regulations through the court system, and that all we need is a bit of funds, because I know as an organization, I'll stick up for what we've been doing over the last 2 years. We've been putting patients and healthcare practitioners forward, helping them get access through treatment. I mean, the evidence is there. It's all there. We just need to collect it. So it is frustrating that it's so expensive, and that this is the way that sometimes we have to operate in a democracy, that we've got to raise funds in order to bring things to court. But that's where we're at. So, my message to the listeners and people out there is, there's a lot of Canadians, and we only need a couple bucks from each of them, and we can have medical psilocybin in this country. And I believe that this could eventually apply to everyone, because we all die. We all have, go through stints in life or have ongoing mental health issues. And psilocybin can be helpful. So I really hope that this succeeds and that it wins. Now, Paul, I was wondering if maybe you could just comment on one other thing that seems to be reoccurring. Do you think there's any solution to this? I see medical cannabis, medical assistance in dying, safe injection of heroin. Every single time it seems to involve long drawn out court cases. Is our democracy broken, or is this representative of a failure of Health Canada and of our politicians to follow the Constitution, or is this just the way it goes?
Well, I guess it's a combination of things. It's the dying drug war, which is still infecting our thinking on various subjects, including this. I think that's part of it. Maybe sometimes politicians need a little bit of an encouragement. I don't think they're hostile to making it more reasonable. I think at times I almost feel like they like the idea of being forced by a court case to be more reasonable. They can sort of cater to both sides, saying, well, the judge made us do it. But I think in their hearts, they're with us, even though they might not be brave enough to step forward. But I guess it's a combination of things. I think there may be a little bit of people just grow. I think in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of increased understanding about what a terrific substance psilocybin is and the miracles it can do in such a safe manner. It's really been remarkable, and it's so suitable for this moment in time. And we're just beginning to kind of get our heads around this. I think maybe this court case 10 years ago, it would be a different story. But today, a lot of people are beginning to appreciate what it can do. And that's part of the reason that these such difficult exemption schemes that the government has are not at all suitable for what we have today, because there's a lot of people who want access. A lot of people have conditions for which this could be therapeutic. This isn't 2 or 3 people, and once we meet those 2 or 3, everything's going to be fine. Many need it. And so this process in which you have to put together a special big application with all sorts of special documents, and you need a team of consultants and lawyers, and then when they refuse you for no good reason, you have to have the lawyers take you to federal court. This isn't suitable for vulnerable people of modest means, especially when many need access. We trust doctors to make decisions about many much less safe drugs, such as opioids. Let doctors decide what's best for these patients in such terrible conditions.
And Paul, you're in Toronto, where I saw the news the other day. You just had a wonderful mushroom dispensary open up in your city. What's the point in the government, as you're saying, denying? And when we say government, I mean, I always like to name them. Caroline Bennett and Jean-Yves Duclos, the ministers of health who have the power and the authority to make the changes here and to grant the exemptions that these patients and healthcare practitioners are requesting. I mean, you speak about, do they hate psychedelics and psilocybin, or do they just lack the compassion and courage? I think it's the latter. How can anyone hate a substance that is so healing to people? I don't know. And if anything, it might just be misinformation or ignorance to how helpful it is, and that can be overcome by reading studies. But, what do you have to say about politicians and a government and system that allows for stores to sell psilocybin openly, and then to at the same time deny patients and healthcare practitioners access to psilocybin? It's like they're choosing where they want to enforce the law and where they don't.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And the fact that shroomies and others in other parts of the country have opened up, that's a natural consequence of this crummy system that they have in which few can get access. So if you can't get it legally, you're going to go to the black market. And I'm shocked when if anybody from the government complains about these places, or let alone tries to bust them, and I'm sure they're going to bring their own constitutional challenge faster than you can blink, faster than you can say Section 7. They're going to be in court. I think they're being left alone because everyone realizes the system's broken, and they're fixing the system until the government gets the courage to do the right thing. And we might need a federal court judge to help them along with that courage. So,
well, and that's been my thought. I in no way I'm advocating for these places or saying that they're legal, but certainly if the government had the ability under the courts to bring them down, they would. And maybe this is a signal that, what are they doing that's breaking the law, right? Because I almost look at that. Why are these places allowed to sell drugs, scheduled drugs on street corners? And maybe the answer is because the police know that they can't prosecute it, or because it's not a good use of their time. And if that's the case, then what's the point in keeping it illegal and limiting patients from accessing it? It really just seems like a conundrum that's right there out in the open in Canada. that completely degrades any reason for keeping these substances so strictly regulated.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And I can tell you that the Ontario Court of Appeal back in 2003 in the cannabis context in Hitzig said that because in that case, the government was openly saying, well, you can just get your cannabis from one of those illegal medical dispensaries that are around. And the Court of Appeal just had some nasty words for the government saying, don't you dare rely on the black market to meet supply. And really, that's what they're doing today. And they might not ever openly admit it. And when you get a Section 56 exemption, Spencer, as you know well, there's no place where you can legally get it. It's not safe to pick it because it could be poisonous. Poisonous mushrooms look a lot like psilocybin mushrooms. No one can give it to you, and they never grant exemptions for growing. So there is no legal means of accessing it. And many can't even get the authorization in the first place. So anyway, the government is in effect avoiding a healthcare crisis by turning the other way while the black market thrives. Many don't like that, and the real answer is just to fix the underlying problem and provide a rational system for access.
Absolutely, and I'll just comment because if there are any viewers out there that don't know what the 3 regulatory pathways currently are, there's Section 56, which is essentially a part of our Controlled Drugs and Substances Act that says that the Minister of Health, again, that's Jean-Yves Duclos, and Minister Caroline Bennett, have the authority to exempt any person or class of persons from those regulations. And that worked to get us about 56 exemptions. And then they also made amendments to the Special Access Program, which is traditionally used for patients who are trying to access, say, emergency cancer drugs that aren't approved in Canada. I think maybe I actually got the numbers today, the exact numbers, while on a call with Psychedelics Canada. It seems like 45 requests have been sent for 64 patients, 30 of which have been approved, and 11 are still under review. So, you know, the SAP system isn't working out that well either, because we have hundreds and hundreds of patients who are trying to get access right now. And then the third option is clinical trials. And since day one, Health Canada has been encouraging people to take clinical trials, to go through clinical trials to access a substance. And maybe that might be my last question here. Is why aren't everybody just using clinical trials to access psilocybin?
I am astonished that the government thinks this is some kind of Band-Aid for this open bleeding wound that is their regulations. First of all, it takes a long time to get approval for a clinical trial. So a patient can sit there waiting for many, many, many months. They could be deemed not suitable for reasons beyond their knowledge at some point. They could get a placebo even after all the long waits, and they get accepted and they're in and they get the placebo, and so they don't get any treatment. But perhaps most importantly of all, the clinical study is all about some other scientific objective. It's not about treating this patient. It's really unethical to direct patients to try and get their treatment through a clinical trial. I'm astonished that they think this is a great plan for getting access. And we're going to make it abundantly clear that it's unethical to direct patients to try and get their access through a clinical trial. It's shame on the government. Shame on the government is what I say about that.
Well, thank you very much for making that clear, because it's been something that, you know, time after time, the government has requested that both patients and healthcare practitioners do. And in the last interview that I did with one of the lawyers on our other case, Nicholas Pope, when a number of healthcare practitioners were denied access to psilocybin through Section 56 for training purposes, the government actually pointed back and said, no, you've got to go do clinical trials. And then they denied that. And we've actually just recently received documents, internal memos from the same government saying that clinical trials are unethical and not possible for that purpose. So, you know, it almost feels like sometimes these healthcare practitioners and patients are being gaslighted and being told to go do one thing, whether it's Section 56, SAP, or clinical trials, and then repeatedly denied every time without a focus on the actual patient. And, you know, that might bring us back to a question I have for you that I know the answer. What is the purpose of of our CDSA? What is the main purpose of our Controlled Drugs and Substances Act?
Well, the objective of the Act is supposed to be health and safety. And when we challenge the laws under Section 7 of the Charter, that's a key consideration that comes up a number of times in the analysis is, well, are these restrictions that they're applying to patients, are they tied to health and safety? Is there a good reason? Is this enhancing health and safety in some manner? And of course, it is not. It's undermining health because patients have to suffer far longer than they need to. It's undermining safety because it's driving people to the black market and encouraging them to purchase psilocybin that they don't know where it came from. It's not at all consistent with health and safety, which is the objective of the CDSA.
Awesome. Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Again, this is Paul Lewin. He is supporting 8 patient plaintiffs in accessing psilocybin. And it sounds like what we need now is funds. So that's what we'll be doing. And I promise I'll have you back on so that we can give people an update, hopefully after we've raised about $100,000 and done the most significant portion of work here, as I'm sure we'll uncover quite a bit over the next couple months. So Paul, thank you so much for all the work that you have done with TheraSil and for coming on today.
Thank you.